What we just need to understand as modern women and men is that that was such a crushing act where female wisdom, female autonomy, female worship was completely destroyed. Of course, we are still feeling that today. How can we not? Just walking into that torture chamber, I was sickened. I was in tears. I was so shocked. I was so incredibly shocked. It all started on a much lighter note, to be fair. So if you'll indulge me, let's pretend for a minute that I didn't just have a life-altering realization and start from the beginning. Bonjour from the southwest of France. I'm Giselle Stein. I'm a fantasy author and I'm currently in the Dordogne to research my upcoming witchy fantasy trilogy. So the Dordogne is a place packed with ancient history. There's a lot of medieval castles and a lot of medieval villages, but it's also known for its prehistory. The Neanderthals first evolved here, and this is also the place where you can find some of the oldest rock paintings in the world, the Lascaux caves. And over the coming days, I'm going to explore all of that and I'm going to take you along for the ride. But this isn't just a research trip. I'm actually here to reunite with my family. I'm originally from Germany, but now I live in Australia, so we haven't seen each other in a while. And this morning, I am the designated bread bringer. So I'm actually on my way to the bakery to get some croissants and some baguettes, and then we're going to have breakfast. Bonjour, je prends 3 croissants et un baguette de tradition.
With my plunder, I made my way back to our cozy rental for the week. Everyone else was still asleep, and so I waited with a good cup of tea, enjoying the typically European sounds that I often miss back home in Oz. Over the coming days, we explored the region, with one medieval village prettier than the next, and local markets where we bought all kinds of fresh produce, taking turns cooking up a storm in the kitchen, exchanging recipes and stories the others did not yet know. All went well until one day when we visited this place. And frankly, I didn't expect it to unnerve me as much as it did.
I just came to sit out on the porch to check in with you. Obviously, I don't have that much time to do the YouTube thing because I'm with my family and it's so lovely to catch up and reunite. But they have just gone to lie down for a nap. I'm probably going to do the same soon. But so yeah, I just wanted to tell you a little bit more about my book research and what it is that I'm actually doing here in the southwest of France. I'm currently writing a witchy fantasy trilogy about 2 witch twins who must bring down an ancient oligarchy in order to preserve Mother Nature and the roots of witchcraft. And so that ancient oligarchy is actually why I'm here. So the villain of the story, or the villains, they are all immortals. And so they have been on this earth for a very long time. They have literally been, some of them have been around since the dawn of time. They have been around for millennia. And as I was writing, the first book is now about to be completed and it's going to be released in August this year. And I'm slowly approaching the second book and the third book, and I'm planning it, and I started to realize that I really needed to get a sense of what it's like, what it would be like if you have been alive for that long. What are your beliefs? How do you feel about death? Do you still have ambition? Do you still love? And so I chose the Dordogne Valley, which is where we are now, because it is so incredibly rich in human history. The Dordogne River is running through this valley, and on the banks of the river are all these mountains and all these hills, and literally every second hill has a castle on it. And this was an area that was very important during the 100-Year War between the French and the British, and so there are all these castles kind of swapped owners, and huge human history here, also because there were so many resources in the area that were worth fighting for. The Vikings came down this river, but the history goes even further back than this here. I said in the intro, there is so much history, so much evidence here of prehistoric times, cave paintings, and the Neanderthals first evolved here, and there is a whole cave city that is still intact where people once lived. There's just so much to explore and so much to see, and I feel like already it has helped me so much to get a better understanding and a better sense of, or like at least I got a glimpse now, and I have something to work with, you know. So it was already worth it for in that regard. And yesterday we went to a fortress that had been built into a hill. And what was so incredible about that particular fortress was the history. So the different eras, the different ages were literally built on top of one another. So at first, in prehistoric times, cavemen literally used that cave, and then people kept on using that particular spot. They built their fortress in there, and then the fortress was passed down through generations. And so you can really see history that has come alive in that one cave over millennia, over thousands upon thousands of years. And my main villain, the immortal Mordecai in my story, he is from the south of France, and he has been around for a very long time. And in my story, he is the man behind the witch hunts. He's like the brain behind the witch hunts, who kind of ghost wrote the Malleus Maleficarum. And I have decided that that is going to be, I'm going to give it a fictional name, but that is going to be where he once resided, maybe where he was born. And so I was so incredibly moved by that place because of the different histories that were literally clashing. At the bottom cave, you have how the first humans, the cavemen, would have lived there, and you have an exhibition on that. And those people in the Paleolithic era, they had made all these what's called Venus figurines. They're also called grandma goddesses. So back then, people clearly worshipped the feminine. They worshipped the elderly women in their community, and you can see that in the way those figurines, those bodies are shaped. They're older bodies. They're also, what I loved so much, they were not perfect bodies. They were just very normal, relatable female bodies. And so at the bottom you have this incredible demonstration of the fact that once upon a time the female, the feminine, was revered, was worshipped, and was appreciated. And then you sort of make your way up to the second and the third floor, and then you get towards the Middle Ages. And the last bit, and that is the voluntary part of the exhibition, it's behind the gift shop, and you can decide if you want to go in or not. And me, for my research, obviously I wanted to, but that it is the torture chamber, right? And it must be one of the best preserved torture chambers. They have a huge exhibition of very dark, very, very scary artifacts. I wouldn't even call them artifacts. Proof of what was done to people back in the day. And the most shocking thing of all was that most of these torture devices were made specifically for women. How do we know it was specifically made for women? Well, because it was related to body parts that only women have. And the list of the things that men came up with to torture women and to get the evil out of wise women whom they wanted to crush. You know, the creativity and the energy that was spent on creating these torture devices to break women, that is something that took me by surprise, and I am my research has reached another level, and I am shocked but glad that I got to see this, because only when you see the amount, we've all heard of the pyre and maybe 2 or 3 other, the ducking stool maybe, or feather and tar, but that's it. But like there were, I saw at least 50 different methods of torturing women that people came up with, and it was the most horrendous stuff. And you really need to understand, like, wherever attention goes, energy flows. And it was really, that is how important it was to break women back in those times. That is, seeing as there was so much energy, so much creativity, and so much resources spent on developing these methods of breaking women, that just goes to show how important it was back then. And also how hard it must have been for the system to break women like that. It would have taken a long time, but they did succeed in the end. And what we just need to understand as modern women and men is that was such a crushing act that went on over centuries, where female wisdom, female autonomy, female worship was completely eradicated and destroyed. And this is something, of course, it went on for centuries, it went on for such a long time. Of course, we are still feeling that today. How can we not? Just walking into that torture chamber, I was sickened. I was in tears. I was so shocked. I was so incredibly shocked. And so I went to the gift shop afterwards, and I bought this little thing. So I bought this little Venus figurine because it just, God damn it. Because it just reminded me of, there once was another way. And maybe also just for myself, it reminded me why this book is so important to me, and why I just really want to tell this story. And so that's just something I wanted to share with you. It's maybe a bit too heavy for such a beautiful day. You can just hear the birds and looking at all the flowers. But yeah.
I'm not gonna lie, it took a good few days for my already overthinking mind to place this entire experience. I paused the book research for a bit and enjoyed my family time, visiting these beautiful gardens and the famous Chateau Milande where Josephine Baker once resided. But eventually I did find my stride again and decided to finish off my time in France visiting a place literally as old as time.
So I've just come out of my tour of the Lascaux caves, and it's actually really good. I wasn't sure at first because the only thing you can see there is a replica of the original cave. So the original cave, which was discovered in the 1940s, you can no longer see because it's too risky to destroy those original paintings because of our human breath and the humidity and the carbon dioxide that we carry into those caves. You're not allowed to go in there anymore, but they made a complete, perfect replica. And that replica also took like 11 years to make, so still very impressive. And I really enjoyed it. I'm so glad I came. So those cave paintings, unfortunately, you were not allowed to film in there. But so those cave paintings are 21,000 years old. They're from the times of the Ice Age. And the detail you find in that, and the myths and the question marks that are still surrounding those paintings are just incredible. And what impressed me most was actually that they never lived in that cave. They just came there to paint and to do art. And they know this because there's no proof of like a fireplace found or any other signs of fire on the walls or charcoal or anything like that. So no one ever lived in there. They specifically came for this ritual of painting those animals onto the walls. And obviously what was so interesting to me as a fantasy author writing about witches and the feminine and what happened before the patriarchy. And you know, my book is trying to find a way back to what was before the patriarchy. And it was so interesting because the guy said, you usually don't find many humans depicted in those caves, but when you do, it is usually female body parts, or it is the Venus figurines. It is those grandma goddesses that you find on the wall. So I found that really interesting, and also it was very, very special to see something that old, and instantly your mind is trying to make sense of it all, and your imagination runs wild. And it's so fascinating how there are these similarities. Those were Homo sapiens, you know, they were not so different from us. So what does this all mean in terms of my book research now? I don't know how exactly I'm going to work this into my fantasy novel. I think it just gives me a deeper understanding of human history and of what it's like to be immortal, maybe. I don't know yet how it's all going to feed into it, but I leave this place with a new understanding of human history, of human myths, and the importance of storytelling. I'm just so inspired. I always say the best part about my job is the research and the inspiration it provides. I leave France tomorrow and I have one more research stop in Europe. It is also very, very rich in history. So if you want to leave a guess, if you can think of a place where I might be going next in Europe, drop me a comment, and otherwise I'll see you back here next week for the next video from my final stop in Europe. Thanks so much for watching. Bye-bye.